Pick it up with your hands, old man. If you want a paycheck, you better earn it. The mop bucket lay on its side, dirty water spreading across the polished lobby floor of the Ridgeway Corporate Center. Mr. Alvarez, 63, knelt on his aching knees, scooping glass shards from the broken vase with trembling fingers while his boss stood over him, arms folded, a satisfied sneer on his face. The security cameras watched everything. So did the night. Sir, I didn't break it, Alvarez stammered, his accent thickening when he was nervous. The delivery guy. The delivery guy is gone, the boss snapped. But you're here. And I need someone to blame when the owner sees that his precious vase is gone. From the corner of the lobby, a low growl rolled through the air. A brown mutt, medium-sized, wiry fur, eyes too smart for a dog, stood stiff beside a yellow caution sign. His name tag read Rookie, on a cheap blue collar. He stared at the boss like he could see something rotten under the man's expensive shirt. Get that flea hotel out of here, the boss muttered. I told you no dogs on shift. Alvarez swallowed. Please, Mr. Denton, sir, he's all I got. He doesn't bother anyone. I get lonely at night. Denton stepped closer, shining shoes dangerously near the puddle. This is a Class A office building, not a retirement home. If the owner comes by and sees a homeless-looking mutt in the lobby, we're both done. But only one of us is replaceable, understand? The glass cut into Alvarez's fingertips. A small dot of blood appeared. Rookie whined, inching forward, sniffing the air like he smelled the pain. Back, Alvarez whispered in Spanish. Quédate, Rookie. The elevator dinged. Both men turned as the doors slid open. A tall guy in gray coveralls stepped out, pushing a rolling cart with fresh cleaning supplies. Young but not too young, mid-30s maybe, with tired blue eyes that checked every corner instinctively, like he'd been in rooms where missing a corner could get you killed. A name patch was stitched onto his chest, Eric. Hey, he said, giving an awkward half-wave. Night shift janitor? HR said to report to Mr. Denton. Denton straightened immediately, switching to his fake professional smile. That's me. Perfect timing, Eric. You're the new hire. And you're about to learn how things work around here. Eric's gaze slid from Denton to Alvarez on his knees, to the blood on the older man's fingers, to the brown mutt still growling under his breath. Something in his jaw tightened. You okay, sir? Eric asked Alvarez quietly. We have a mess, Denton interrupted. Old man got clumsy. Broke a $600 vase. Company policy says he pays for it. With his next 3 paychecks. Alvarez's shoulders sagged. Rookie gave a sharp bark as if protesting. That legal? Eric asked, voice still calm but flatter now. Denton chuckled. You here to clean toilets or teach me labor law, Rookie? Eric's eyes flicked once to a security camera in the corner, then back. Just asking how you do things. Denton stepped closer to Alvarez and nudged the broken ceramic with his shoe, splashing the older man's uniform. Get it done or you're gone. And take that ugly mutt outside before I call animal control. Rookie's growl deepened, teeth showing now. Eric moved without thinking, sliding his cart between the boss and the kneeling janitor, putting himself in the way. For a second, that calm, careful look in his eyes changed, hardening into something colder, sharper, the look of a man who'd seen worse bullies than Denton and ended their nights in handcuffs. I got this, Eric said. You don't need to stand over him. Denton's smile vanished. Excuse me? Eric held his gaze, unblinking. The dog's growl faded as if he recognized something in the new guy, something like protection. Somewhere deep inside, the part of Eric's heart that had spent 10 years kicking indoors with a SWAT team stirred awake. But nobody here knew that. As far as they were concerned, he was just the new janitor trying to keep his head down. At least, Eric added softly, you don't need to bleed on him while he works. For the first time, Denton's eyes narrowed, reassessing this new hire. The elevator doors slid shut behind Eric with a quiet click. And standing in that fluorescent lobby with a humiliated old janitor, a bristling brown mutt, and a boss who thought he owned the building, Eric realized something. This wasn't going to be just a side job. This was about to become a battleground. And Denton had no idea who he'd just picked a fight with, yet. The break room smelled like burned coffee and bleach. Alvarez sat at the tiny table, a band-aid wrapped clumsily around his finger, staring at his time card as if it might tell him what to do. Rookie lay at his feet, head on his boot, eyes tracking every sound in the hallway. Eric filled 2 paper cups from the coffee pot, set one in front of Alvarez and took the seat across from him. You don't have to do that, Mijo, Alvarez murmured. Coffee is expensive here. It's free, Eric said. Just terrible. A small smile flickered across the older man's face and vanished. He looked 10 years older than he probably was, shoulders stooped from nights spent scrubbing someone else's success off marble floors. "He really gonna take 3 paychecks from you?" Eric asked. Alvarez shrugged. "He controls the hours. If I complain, he cuts my shifts, says I'm too slow. Rent doesn't care if my feelings are hurt." Rookie huffed, eyes shifting to Eric like he expected an answer from him too. Eric studied the battered time clock on the wall. Denton's name was on the posted schedule. And underneath, strict and no overtime policy. Hours can be adjusted at management discretion. "I can talk to HR, Eric offered. Alvarez shook his head quickly. They are his cousin. Last time somebody complained, suddenly there was budget cuts. No more job. Eric leaned back, heartbeat ticking up. Another building. Another man in a position of power squeezing the weakest just because he could. His mind flashed back to a different night. A landlord locking a family out at 2 a.m., kids crying in the hall. Eric and his SWAT team being told, "It's a civil matter, not our jurisdiction." That night had never sat right with him. "How long you had him?" Eric asked, nodding at Rookie. "Found him behind the dumpster last winter," Alvarez said, voice softening. "People left him there, tied up in the snow. Ribs like a skeleton. I was supposed to ignore him. I couldn't. So now he's my problem." He smiled down at the dog. "Best problem I ever took home." Rookie wagged his tail like he understood every word. The break room door swung open. Denton strode in, phone in hand, not bothering to knock. "There you are," he said to Alvarez. "Clock out at midnight tonight instead of 1. Need to make up for your little accident." "That's an hour of pay," Alvarez protested. "Please, sir, my rent." "You should have thought about that before you smashed decorations like a toddler," Denton snapped. He turned to Eric. "You'll stay till 1 and finish his floor. Might as well see what you're worth." Eric's jaw flexed. "So he works less and gets paid less, but the building still gets the same work done." "That's called efficiency," Denton said. "You got a problem learning how grown-up business works?" Rookie stood up, tail stiff, positioning himself between Denton and Alvarez, a quiet barrier of fur and determination. Denton glared down at the dog. "Last warning. Next shift, I don't see that mutt in my building. Or you both are gone." He left without waiting for a response, door banging behind him. The silence he left felt louder than his voice. Alvarez's hands shook as he picked up his card. "I can't lose this job," he whispered. "My wife, she's gone. My daughter moved 3 states away. It's just me and Rookie now. They don't rent apartments to dogs." Eric clasped his own paper cup, knuckles whitening. He could almost hear his SWAT commander's voice in his head. "You don't get to fix the whole world, Hart. You just handle the door in front of you." Well, this was a door. A shiny glass one with "Building Manager" stenciled on it in gold letters. Eric glanced at the hallway camera again, tracing the angle, doing the math. "Hey, Mr. Alvarez, that vase. There a camera in the lobby that sees that table?" "Yes. One over the desk. But Mr. Denton controls the recordings." A new fear crossed his face. "He can make it say whatever he wants." Rookie nudged Eric's boot and then unexpectedly trotted to the break room door, nose working overtime. He whined, scratched once, then looked back as if urging them to follow. "What is it, boy?" Eric asked quietly. Rookie scratched the door again, more urgent. Alvarez frowned. "He does that when something is wrong." Eric stood, the old instincts fully awake now. "Stay here a second." He opened the door and stepped into the dim hallway. The building was mostly empty at this hour, just the faint buzz of fluorescent lights and the distant hum of an elevator shaft. Rookie slipped past him, nose to the carpet, heading not toward the lobby, but toward the manager's office. Right toward the door with Denton on the plaque, and the faint sound of raised voices spilling out from inside. Eric took 2 slow steps closer, Rookie at his heels, heart rate steadying into the cold, methodical rhythm he knew too well from raids. Because on the other side of that door, someone was arguing with Denton about cash drops and back entrances. And in that moment, Eric realized this was bigger than a broken vase and stolen hours. He moved closer, straining to listen, just as the office door handle began to turn. And whoever was inside was about to catch him eavesdropping, with Rookie right beside him. If you want to know how this story ends, subscribe to the channel and don't miss the next chapters. Things at the Ridgeway Corporate Center are just getting started. Eric reacted on instinct. He reached for the nearest door, the supply closet, pushed it open and slipped inside, drawing Rookie with him by the collar. The dog came willingly, though his eyes never left the manager's office. The hallway lights flickered as Denton's door swung open. "I said no more tonight," Denton hissed. "I have staff here. You want to get us both caught." A second voice, deeper and meaner, replied, "You want your cut, don't you?" Eric held his breath, pressing his ear against the thin closet door. Rookie stood motionless, one paw lifted, every muscle tight. Through the sliver of light under the door, Eric saw shadows on the carpet, 2 pairs of shoes. Denton's polished loafers, and heavy work boots, scuffed and muddy. "Last run," Denton muttered. "We do it after closing tomorrow when the cleaning crew is almost done. They sign off, cameras go down for maintenance, and you roll up the truck to the loading dock. In and out." "Same as last time," the other man said. "Your janitors didn't see anything then." A cold knot formed in Eric's stomach. This wasn't just wage theft and bullying. This was a criminal operation. Maybe burglaries, maybe stolen goods moving through the building. "How much is this one worth?" Denton asked, greed creeping into his voice. "Enough that you can buy all the vases you want," the other man laughed. Eric's mind worked fast. Cash drops. Loading dock. Cameras down. This building was a perfect funnel for stolen merchandise. Quiet at night, a manager in control of the security system, janitors too afraid to speak. And a vulnerable old man they could easily frame if anything went wrong. Rookie emitted a low, frustrated whine. Eric put a finger to his lips. "Easy boy," he whispered. Footsteps moved down the hall. The second man's boots thudded away toward the service exit. Denton lingered a moment, muttering something about idiots and not getting caught again, then retreated to his office. The door snicked shut. Eric exhaled slowly and stepped out of the closet. Rookie patted out first, sniffing the air, then looking up at Eric like he expected instructions. "Okay," Eric murmured. "That's what you were smelling, huh? Trouble." Back in the break room, Alvarez looked up anxiously as they returned. "Everything okay?" "No," Eric said honestly. "But it will be." He sat down opposite Alvarez again, feeling the weight of the choice in front of him. He was technically on medical leave from SWAT after a bad op. Knee torn up, nightmares that left him staring at his bedroom ceiling at 3 a.m. Doctor had said he needed a low-stress environment while he recovered. "Yeah, about that. Mr. Alvarez," Eric said carefully, "has Denton ever asked you to sign off early? Like, say you finished a floor before you actually did?" Alvarez frowned. "Sometimes. He says it keeps the books clean. I sign that everything is secured, then we finish what's left." "Why?" "Have you ever seen anyone near the loading dock late at night?" "Semi-trucks sometimes," Alvarez said. "But they leave fast. I thought they were deliveries." Rookie nudged Eric's hand, wanting contact. Eric scratched behind his ear, grounding himself. He knew what the right thing was. Call his old lieutenant, report what he'd heard, let the detectives handle it. But he also knew how people like Denton operated. They'd blame the janitors, erase recordings, say, "These hourly guys are just trying to dodge discipline." And Alvarez? He'd be the easiest scapegoat. Eric looked at the security camera in the break room. At the clock ticking down to midnight. At the dog who'd somehow led him straight to the corruption. "Listen," Eric said, lowering his voice. "I think Denton is using this building to help someone move stolen goods. If I'm right, you and Rookie are walking witnesses without knowing it." Alvarez's face drained of color. "Stolen? No, I don't want trouble. I just want to work and go home." "And that's exactly why he picked you," Eric replied gently. "Because you're a good man who's scared to lose what little he has." A memory flashed in his head. A teenage suspect crying on a curb saying, "I didn't have a choice." Eric had sworn never to let that excuse stand when predators were involved. He took a breath. "Mr. Alvarez, I need you to trust me. There's more to me than cleaning toilets." Rookie gave a short bark, almost like he agreed. Alvarez studied Eric's face. The steady eyes, the way he looked at exits automatically, the coiled tension in his shoulders like he was ready to spring into action at any second. "Who are you really, Mijo?" Alvarez whispered. Eric opened his mouth to answer. And the PA system crackled to life, making all 3 of them jump. "Night staff to the lobby," Denton's voice boomed, sharp and annoyed. "Now." Eric and Alvarez exchanged a look. Rookie was already at the door. Out in the hall, the lobby lights were brighter than before. A police cruiser's red and blue glow pulsed faintly through the glass doors. 2 officers stood in the lobby with Denton, arms crossed. "That's them," Denton said, pointing straight at Alvarez. "The old man and his dog. They've been trespassing after hours and I think the dog's dangerous." Rookie froze, ears pinned back as one officer's hand went to his taser. And Eric realized Denton wasn't just willing to cut hours or steal wages. He was willing to get a good man, and his dog, taken away in handcuffs or a black plastic bag. Unless someone stopped him. Someone who knew exactly how officers thought when they walked into a scene like this. Someone like a SWAT officer. Hands where I can see them, sir. The older of the two patrol officers held out a palm toward Alvarez, not unkind but firm, the way Eric had done 1,000 times himself. The second officer eyed Rookie warily, fingers hovering near the taser grip. Alvarez lifted his hands, palms up, eyes wide. Officers, please, this is my job. I work here. I have a badge. He had a job, Denton cut in smoothly. But he's been bringing that animal in against company policy, damaging property, ignoring rules. I told him tonight he was done. He refused to leave. Frankly, I'm worried about my safety. Rookie whined, tail tucked, confused by the tension. He inched closer to Alvarez's leg, seeking reassurance. The older officer glanced at Denton. Did he threaten you? Denton hesitated just long enough to make it believable. He raised his voice. Stepped toward me. And that dog, he kept growling. You saw the report last month, right? The break-ins? I have to keep this building secure. Eric stepped forward, heart pounding in a familiar, controlled way. This was a scene he knew from the inside out. The first narrative the officers heard tended to stick, unless someone intervened fast. Officer. Eric said, addressing the older cop. Can I say something? Denton turned on him. You're new. Stay out of this. The cop held up a hand. He's part of your staff, right? He can talk. Eric nodded. Yes, sir. Name's Eric Hart. Started tonight. Mr. Alvarez didn't threaten anybody. I was there. He just asked about losing an hour on his time card. The younger officer's gaze flicked between them, weighing. And the dog? The older officer asked. Calmest dog I've ever seen in a building this noisy, Eric said. He growls when he senses tension. That's all. Never snapped, never lunged. Denton scoffed. Oh, so you're a dog expert now? Eric ignored him, keeping his eyes on the officers. Look, I used to work with canine units. I've seen real aggressive dogs. This isn't one. You get close to his owner, his anxiety spikes. That's loyalty, not violence. The older officer tilted his head. You used to work with K9S? Eric hesitated for a split second. He wasn't supposed to use his status to sway things while on leave. But watching Alvarez's trembling hands and Rookie's terrified eyes, he felt his oath pressing on his chest. I'm on medical leave from Metro SWAT, he said quietly. I can show you my ID in my locker. The air changed. Denton's confidence wavered. You what? The younger officer's eyebrows shot up. SWAT. The older one cleared his throat. Hart. You on Sergeant McCleary's team? Eric nodded. Yes, sir. The officer's stance relaxed a bit. We've run perimeter with your guys before. Good to see you vertical. Denton paled, then quickly recovered. Well, that doesn't change the fact that my employee is causing a disturbance. What disturbance? Eric asked. He had a cut finger and a broken vase that wasn't his fault. That's it. You don't know the history here, Denton snapped. He's been slacking. And he constantly breaks policy with that stray. Rookie whimpered, picking up the anger. Alvarez's eyes flitted to the officers, then to Eric, like he couldn't quite believe any of this was real. Sir, the older cop said to Denton, tone cooling, right now what I see is a labor dispute, not a criminal trespass. You told them to leave tonight? Denton faltered. I told him he was fired. That he needed to clock out early. That's not the same as a formal trespass notice, the cop replied. And if your other staff is backing him up. Eric cut in, choosing his words carefully. Also, I overheard some things tonight that make me think the bigger security risk to this building isn't a 63-year-old janitor and his rescue dog. Denton spun. Don't you dare. The younger cop raised a hand. What kind of things? Rookie stepped closer to Eric now, head high, as if feeling the tide starting to turn. Eric locked eyes with Denton. I'd rather discuss it off the record for a second, officer. Away from management. The older cop studied him for a beat, then jerked his chin toward the far end of the lobby. Fine. Let's walk. As Eric followed the officers a few yards away, Rookie tried to come too. Alvarez held his collar gently. Rookie, no. Stay. The dog whined, torn, watching Eric go. What are you doing? Denton hissed under his breath. You think your SWAT badge scares me? You're a janitor now. Remember that. Eric turned slightly, meeting his eyes. That badge doesn't scare you, he agreed. But the felony charges that might grow out of what I heard tonight? Those will. Denton went still. At the far end of the lobby, the older cop folded his arms. Okay, Hart. Talk. Eric lowered his voice. Your department's been dealing with a string of warehouse and office burglaries, right? Clean entries, disabled cameras, inside help. Both officers stiffened, giving away more than they meant to. I heard Denton discussing cash drops, cameras down for maintenance, and a loading dock visit tomorrow night with someone who didn't look like a tenant, Eric said. He's running something dirty through this building. And if you let him kick out the one guy who's always here to see it, he nodded toward Alvarez, you lose an eyewitness and a canary in the coal mine. The younger cop scratched his neck. You sure about what you heard? Positive, Eric said. Look, I know I'm on leave. I'm trying to keep my head down. But this isn't just a jerk boss. This is a jerk boss with a side hustle that's going to land in your lap soon. The older cop exchanged a look with his partner. All right. We're not taking anyone in tonight. We'll log this as a verbal dispute. No trespass order yet. But we are going to file an internal note and maybe have a detective call you tomorrow. Eric nodded. I'll answer. What about the dog? The younger one asked. As long as nobody gets bit, that's a building policy thing, not ours, the older cop said pointedly, loud enough for Denton to hear. Color flooded back into Alvarez's face. Rookie's tail started to thump cautiously. Denton forced a laugh. Of course. No need to make this bigger than it is. Just trying to keep things professional. The officers headed for the door. As they stepped out into the night, Rookie walked Eric back toward the break room, leaning against his leg like a thank you. You shouldn't have done that for me, Alvarez said softly. You could lose this job. Eric shrugged. I've lost more important things. As they turned the corner, Eric saw Denton watching them from his office doorway, eyes cold, phone already in his hand. A text lit up on Denton's screen, big enough for Eric to catch a glimpse as he passed. Change of plans. We have a problem. Need to move it up. Denton looked up, meeting Eric's gaze with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. See you tomorrow night, Hart, he said. Enjoy your second shift. And Eric felt it in his gut. Denton wasn't backing down. He was accelerating. The next night the building felt different. Too quiet. Eric parked his old pickup in the employee lot, Rookie riding shotgun, head out the window, ears flapping in the cool air. The city skyline glowed in the distance, a reminder that most people were either getting off work or sitting down to dinner. Not walking into a potential crime scene with a mop and a limp. You could have stayed home, Eric muttered to Rookie as they approached the rear entrance. Sat on a couch, chewed a normal dog toy. But no, you had to pick a janitor with a hero complex. Rookie bumped his hand with his nose, unconvinced. Inside, the corridors echoed faintly with the buzz of lights. Alvarez's cart was already in the hallway outside the restrooms on the second floor, the man himself kneeling to scrub a baseboard. He stood slowly as they approached, joints protesting. You came back, Alvarez said, surprise in his voice. Yeah, Eric replied. Seemed like you still needed the help. And the dog? Alvarez asked, glancing around nervously. I asked HR about service animals today, Eric said. They said if he's helping with my medical situation, nobody but them can ask for paperwork. Denton doesn't need to know that. Alvarez's eyebrows shot up. Medical situation? Eric tapped his knee brace under the coveralls. PT injury. And some other stuff in my head the shrink keeps writing long words about. Rookie, as if on cue, pressed close to Eric when a cart squeaked down the hall, calmly anchoring him. Eric gave a half smile. He makes it easier to walk into places like this. That counts. Alvarez chuckled softly. Then he is your problem now. Before they could say more, the overhead intercom crackled. Night staff, remember to sign off your floor reports before midnight. System maintenance will begin shortly after. Eric and Alvarez exchanged a look. Cameras, Eric said. He's going to take them down for maintenance. Alvarez swallowed. Like he said. Eric checked the time. 9:42 p.m. He'd already had a brief call with a detective that afternoon, but the man had been non-committal. We'll look into it, he'd said. We can't just raid a building because a manager sounds shady. So Eric had a narrow window. He couldn't kick in doors or flash a warrant. But he could do what cops did best before warrants existed. Observe, document, and survive long enough to tell the story. Okay, he said quietly. New plan. We split the floors. But wherever you are at 11:45, you and Rookie get to the loading dock. Act like you're just taking trash out. I'll fix a camera on the way. Why the loading dock? Alvarez asked. Because that's where the truck is coming, Eric replied. And I want them to see we're there. That sounds like a way to get fired, Alvarez said. Or a way to keep this from happening again, Eric countered. You said you can't sleep some nights thinking about bills. How do you sleep knowing they use your building to hurt other people too? Alvarez looked at Rookie. The dog looked back, steady as if offering silent backup. Finally, Alvarez nodded. Okay, Mijo. But if something happens, you take him and run. I am old. I can get another job. He only has us. Eric's throat tightened. You're not as disposable as you think. He moved down to the security hub on the first floor under the pretense of wiping fingerprints off the glass doors. Through the small window, he saw Denton hunched over the camera monitors, phone pressed to his ear, an open laptop beside him. Yes, I told you, Denton was saying. We'll do it early. 11 sharp. The fewer janitors around, the better. Art. He'll be stuck upstairs scrubbing toilets. Old man'll be taking trash out like always. They'll sign the log, cameras go down, you roll in. Done. Eric's jaw clenched. 11 not midnight. Good to know. He moved away before Denton could glance up and spot him. The old adrenaline was back now, a slow burn in his veins. This wasn't a sanctioned op, but his training didn't care. It slotted every piece of information into place. At 10:55, Eric found Alvarez in the stairwell, halfway between the second floor and the ground level, trash bags already loaded on a cart. You sure about this? Alvarez whispered. No, Eric said honestly. But I'm sure about him. And I'm tired of watching guys like him win. They pushed the cart together toward the loading dock. Rookie trotted alongside, nose twitching at the cooler night air that seeped in under the heavy metal door. On the wall above the dock entrance, a small camera blinked red. Eric stopped, frowning. Wait. He'd expected it to go dark. Instead, it blinked faster as if recording more actively. That's when he saw it. A second camera tucked into a corner sprinkler head, nearly invisible unless you knew where to look. The kind of cheap, personal device paranoid criminals installed when they didn't fully trust their partners. Well, hello there, Eric murmured. What is it? Alvarez asked. Insurance, Eric said. Not his. Ours. Headlights swept briefly across the lower parking lot outside the dock. The rumble of a truck engine grew louder. Rookie's hackles rose. He gave a single sharp bark. The loading dock door rattled as someone unlocked it from the outside. Eric's pulse pounded loud in his ears as he stepped slightly in front of Alvarez and Rookie, rag and spray bottle still in hand like he was just another janitor caught doing his job. The door rolled up with a metallic clatter. A box truck idled just beyond, white and unmarked. 3 men stood in the gap between truck and dock. 2 big ones in hoodies and gloves. And in the middle, wearing a smug smile and a leather jacket he definitely hadn't bought on a janitor's salary, was the same man whose boots Eric had seen under Denton's office door the night before. Looks like we've got company, the man said, eyeing Eric, Alvarez, and the dog. He stepped onto the dock, blocking their path, eyes cold and amused. And I don't mean the kind that just takes out the trash. The man in the leather jacket took in the scene like he was reading a checklist. Old janitor. Trash cart. Brown mutt. New guy. His eyes lingered on Eric a second longer than felt casual. You're not the usual two, he said. Denton didn't tell me he hired muscle. Eric kept his posture slouched, one hand on the mop handle, the other resting lightly near Rookie's collar. Just here to clean drains, man. Loading docks on my route. Leather jacket chuckled, low and humorless. You hear that, boys? We got ourselves a comedian. One of the hooded men stepped up beside him, shifting a duffel bag from one hand to the other. Metal clinked inside, too dense and sharp for laundry. The other man stayed half in shadow, scanning the lot like he'd done this a dozen times. Behind them, the truck's rear roll-up door rattled. Another set of hands was inside, ready to pass something out. Alvarez swallowed hard. We just take the trash out and go, he murmured. No trouble. Leather jacket's eyes slid to him. Oh, there's already trouble, Abuelo? You saw the truck. That's a problem. But the bigger problem, he nodded at Rookie, is Lassie here. Last thing I need is some security guy pulling footage of a dog sniffing around my wheels. He took a step closer, testing. Rookie lowered his head and let out a quiet, warning growl, deep, not showy, the sound of a dog that meant it. Hey, Eric said, voice calm but edged. Back off him. Leather jacket cocked his head. You got a tone for a janitor. Eric shrugged. You got heat on you for a delivery driver. For a moment, just a heartbeat, the 2 men measured each other. Eric cataloged every detail, The way Leather Jacket kept his hands loose but close to his belt line, the bulge under his jacket that was the wrong shape for a phone, the faint bulge at his ankle, backup piece maybe a knife. Then a new voice cut through the tension. "Everything all right out here?" Denton. He stepped onto the dock, suit jacket over his polo like he thought it made him look more official. His smile froze when he saw Eric standing next to Alvarez and Rookie, all three of them between his building and the truck. "I thought I told you to finish the second floor first," Denton snapped. Eric didn't take his eyes off Leather Jacket. Trash schedule changed. Denton's gaze flitted to the security camera above the dock, then to the corner sprinkler head. For a split second, anger flashed in his eyes, almost panic, then it was gone. "Well," Denton said tightly, "you've done your part. Take your dog and your old friend and go inside. This isn't your area tonight." Leather Jacket raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, I'm gonna disagree, Tom. New guy's curious. That makes him my problem." He stepped closer again into Rookie's space. The dog's growl sharpened. His fur stood up along his spine like a ridge of warning. "Sit," Eric murmured. Rookie glanced up at him, then planted his butt on the cold concrete, muscles still coiled but obeying. Leather Jacket snorted. "Well, at least someone listens to you." He reached one gloved hand out, not to pet but to test, moving it fast toward Rookie's face like a feint. Rookie snapped, not biting but clacking his jaws an inch from the glove, a clear do not. "Whoa." Leather Jacket jerked his hand back. "You see that? That dog is vicious." Denton seized the opportunity like it was oxygen. "I told you, Eric. He's a liability. You two are off the dock. Now." Eric's patience snapped. "Your guy just tried to provoke him," he said. "He warned him off. That's not aggression. That's training." Leather Jacket's eyes narrowed. "Training, huh?" He looked Eric up and down again, slower this time. "Yeah. I know that stance. You're not just some mop jockey." Eric's body went still the way it did right before a door charge. Denton sensed the shift and jumped in, voice sharp. "Enough. Hart, you're fired. You and the old man. You bring that mutt back on my property, I have you trespassed and arrested. You understand me?" Alvarez gasped softly. Rookie whined, confused, glancing between them. Eric felt the whole world tilt onto a knife's edge. Denton wanted them gone before the offload. Leather Jacket wanted to know who this janitor really was. The police detective was, at best, sitting somewhere miles away with a half-written note on his desk. No backup. No radio. Just a dog who trusted him and a man who had no one else. Eric made his choice. He straightened. The slouch fell away. The limp became a measured, grounded stance. His voice dropped into the command tone he hadn't used in months. "You're not firing anyone," he said. "And nobody is touching that dog." Leather Jacket laughed once. "Big talk." Eric met his eyes. Eric Hart, Metro SWAT. Badge number 4172. Currently on medical leave, still under oath. I've already reported this doc and your little camera games to a detective. So from this moment on, every word out of your mouth can either help you, or bury you. Denton's face drained of color. You lied on your application." "I left a few lines blank," Eric said. "You lied about running a clean building. I think we're not the same." The men on the truck shifted. One of them muttered, "Cops," under his breath. Leather Jacket's smile didn't quite reach his eyes now. "You alone?" Eric didn't blink. "You really want to bet I am?" Silence hummed between them. Then Leather Jacket's hand started to move toward his waistband. Rookie exploded into motion, barking, the concrete suddenly very small between all of them. And the man behind Leather Jacket swung the duffel bag like a club, aiming it straight at Alvarez's head. Time slowed. Eric saw the duffel bag arcing toward Alvarez's head, heavy and fast, the old man too stunned to move. "Rookie!" Eric barked. The dog launched sideways like a brown missile, slamming into Alvarez's hip. Man and dog tumbled together, the duffel whistling through empty air where his head had been a heartbeat before. It smashed into the metal dock rail instead with a dull, ugly thunk. The zipper burst open. Boxes spilled out across the concrete. Phones, tablets, jewelry displays, all with retail tags still on them. Stolen, no question. Leather Jacket swore. "Idiot." The man who'd swung the duffel squared up for another hit, this time turning toward Eric. Eric stepped in, not back, letting years of muscle memory take over. He caught the duffel strap, yanked hard, and used the man's own momentum to spin him off balance. The guy stumbled, crashed into the truck bumper, winded. "Stay down," Eric snapped. He felt more than saw the second thug move. Boots scraping, air shifting behind him. Eric pivoted, bringing the duffel up like a shield just as the second man lunged with something in his hand, metal glinting. The blade slammed into the bag instead of Eric's ribs, thudding through cardboard and plastic. Close. Too close. You're making this worse, Eric said through clenched teeth. For who? Leather Jacket asked. He'd stepped back, drawing the gun Eric knew had been there. Black, compact, held low and practiced. He pointed it not at Eric but at Rookie, who was scrambling to his paws beside Alvarez, fur soaked with spilled coffee from one of the trash bags. You move again, Leather Jacket said, and Lassie here goes first. Then Grandpa. Then you. Rookie froze, chest heaving, eyes fixed on the gun. Alvarez wrapped his arms around the dog's neck on instinct, shielding him with his own body. Eric's hands went up, duffel strap sliding off his shoulder. Easy. You pull that trigger on a dock camera, you're not walking away clean. Cop or not, I already got your face, your truck, your product. You start killing unarmed employees and a dog? That's life without parole. Leather Jacket's jaw tightened. You don't have backup. You're on leave. Nobody will believe you when Denton says you turned on us. Denton latched onto that. Yeah. He's unstable. You saw the way he escalated with the officers last night? I de-escalated, Eric snapped. Then calmer to Leather Jacket. You know how this works. The first guy to play ball gets the best deal. You're the one with leverage. You flip on Denton, plead out on the burglaries, maybe see daylight before your hair goes white. Or you tie yourself to him and go down together. Leather Jacket's gaze flicked to Denton, who was sweating now, eyes darting between the gun, the spilled merchandise and the camera above them. All this, Eric added softly, over helping a bully steal from an old man's paycheck and a building full of people who never did a damn thing to you. For a second, Leather Jacket's grip loosened. Doubt crept in. Then distant sirens wailed faintly, growing louder. Everyone on the dock heard it. Denton whipped toward Leather Jacket. You said nobody followed you. Leather Jacket snarled, shoving the barrel harder toward Rookie. Then we're all in this. I'm not going back inside. We get rid of them, load what we can, and run. Eric saw the muscles in his forearm tense, the telltale micro-movement before a squeeze. He had no shield. No vest. Just his body between a man with a gun and two lives he refused to sacrifice. Eric moved. He dove sideways, one hand snapping out to slap the big red emergency stop button for the dock door as he went. The heavy metal door jerked and began to drop with a grinding roar, cutting the light, the line of sight, everything. Leather Jacket cursed and fired. The shot exploded through the concrete bay, deafeningly loud. And something shattered above them in a spray of plastic and glass. Water burst from the ceiling sprinkler, pouring down like sudden rain as the dock plunged into half-dark, sirens closing in fast. The world vanished in white noise. Water hammered down from the shattered sprinkler, turning the dock into a soaking blur of metal and concrete. The rolling door screeched halfway down, grinding to a stop, leaving a jagged rectangle of night at the bottom. Sirens wailed closer, bouncing off the alley walls. Rookie yelped as the first blast of water hit him, skidding on the slick floor. Eric grabbed the dog's collar with one hand and Alvarez's sleeve with the other, yanking them behind a stack of shrink-wrapped pallets just as another shot cracked. Concrete dust rained from the wall inches from Eric's shoulder. Stop shooting, you idiot! Denton screamed, voice cracking. The cops are coming. Leather Jacket swore, twisting to keep the gun trained through the dim, watery chaos. One of his own guys slipped hard, went down on his back, the knife skittering away into a puddle of broken phones and jewelry cases. Rookie saw the blade flash and barked, lunging toward it. Rookie, no! Alvarez cried. The dog hit the ground in a half-slide, chest plowing through water, and planted a paw firmly on the knife, pinning it there. He stood over it, growling as the thug crawled toward him on hands and knees. Move, mutt, the man snarled, reaching out. Rookie snapped his teeth inches from the man's fingers. The thug jerked back, shaking, eyes wide. He looked up and saw Eric coming. Eric grabbed the man by the collar and drove him sideways into the pallet, not pretty, just effective. The guy's breath whooshed out. He slumped, dazed but not out. Stay down, Eric rasped. Behind him, Leather Jacket shoved Denton toward the partially open door. You wanted in on the action? Congratulations. You're my shield. Denton stumbled. What are you? Leather Jacket grabbed a fistful of Denton's shirt and yanked him down, crouching behind him as he moved toward the truck, keeping Denton between him and the direction of the approaching sirens. Water poured over both of them, plastering Denton's hair to his forehead. You're insane. Denton choked. Look in a mirror, Leather Jacket snapped. Eric saw it, Denton being dragged, the gun, the narrowing exit, and knew if they made it to the truck, someone was getting tossed out on the highway before the cops ever caught up. "Rookie!" Eric shouted. The dog's head whipped toward him. "Guard!" Eric pointed straight at Alvarez, who was still kneeling in the spray, shaking. Rookie hesitated, torn, then moved back to plant himself in front of the old man, chest out, eyes burning. "You stayed. Good boy." Eric shoved off the pallet, boots slipping but finding just enough traction. He sprinted across the wet concrete, closing the gap as Leather Jacket dragged Denton toward the low opening at the bottom of the dock door. Leather Jacket saw him coming and swung the gun up again, not at Eric this time but wildly at anything that moved. Eric didn't think. He launched low, shoulder first, hitting both men at the hips. All three of them slammed into the edge of the door. Pain exploded in Eric's bad knee, sparks lit his vision. The gun went flying. It skittered across the floor toward the edge of the dock, and stopped, teetering on the lip, barrel pointed down into the gap where red-blue lights were now flashing. "Police! Don't move!" a voice shouted from outside. Leather Jacket scrambled, reaching for the weapon. Eric grabbed his wrist, twisting. They rolled, grappling, half in water, half in the metallic taste of panic. Denton crawled away on all fours, gasping, heading for the shadows. Rookie barked once, sharp and furious. Boots pounded on the ramp outside. The rolling echo of doors slamming open. More voices. "Hands where we can see them. Now." Eric pinned Leather Jacket's arm against the floor and forced his own hands up, yelling through the spray, "Metro SWAT. Badge in my locker. Suspects armed, gun at the dock edge, 2 more inside the truck." The first officer to appear under the half-closed door froze for a microsecond, taking in the wild, soaked tableau, spilled loot, truck, cowering manager, old janitor, dog baring his teeth. His gaze locked on Eric and the man he was holding. Then his gun tracked sideways, sight landing squarely on Leather Jacket's head. "Don't move," the officer said. Leather Jacket went limp. Behind them, more officers flooded the dock, shouting commands, kicking the knife away, hauling the dazed thug off the pallet and out from under Rookie's steady growl. Someone grabbed Denton by the arm as he tried to edge back toward the building. "Hey," he yelped. "I'm the manager here." "Yeah?" the officer holding him said. "You can explain that down at the station." For the first time since the sprinkler exploded, Eric let himself breathe. Water still pounded down. His knee screamed. His hands shook. Rookie trotted to his side, pressing his wet head into Eric's chest like he was trying to anchor him now. Eric wrapped an arm around the dog's neck and held on. Just as a new voice cut through the chaos, cold and professional. "Hart. You want to tell me why every time you take a low-stress job, I end up with a truckload of felonies and a half-flooded crime scene?" Eric looked up. Detective Raines stood in the doorway from the interior corridor, suit soaked at the shoulders, badge clipped to his belt, an exasperated look on his face. And in his other hand he held a small, dripping device Eric recognized immediately. A hidden camera. The kind you tuck in a sprinkler head. Detective Raines shook the water off the tiny camera like it was a drowned bug and held it up. "Next time," he said dryly, "try not to shoot my equipment, okay?" Leather Jacket glared from the floor, hands cuffed behind him now. "You're what?" Raines crouched by the pallet stack out of the main waterfall, and clicked open a plastic casing. Inside, the SD card gleamed like a small, incriminating tooth. "We've had this dock under quiet surveillance for a week," Raines said. "Anonymous tip about late-night deliveries. But I guess tonight you boys decided to put on a live show." He slipped the card into a clear evidence bag and sealed it. Eric let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "So that camera was ours?" Raines confirmed. "Good eye, by the way. You were right about this place. We just needed one more night to catch them in the act." He gave Eric a look. "You ever heard of staying on medical leave and letting the rest of us earn our paychecks?" Eric managed a tired half-smile. "Old habits." Raines snorted, then turned toward Denton, who was spluttering as an officer walked him closer, hands zip-tied in front. "This is ridiculous," Denton protested. "You can't arrest me. I called you last night about a dangerous employee and his dog. I'm the one who's been trying to keep this place safe." Raines raised an eyebrow. "That's so." "Yes." Denton jabbed a finger toward Eric. "He's unstable. Lied on his application. Brought an animal into a professional environment. Started a fight with my contractors." Leather Jacket laughed, bitter and short. "Contractors. That what we are now?" Raines glanced at the supervising officer. "Get ID on all of them. Run the truck plates. I'm betting my pension this isn't their first stop." He turned back to Denton. Here's the thing. We've been watching several buildings in this area get hit. No forced entry. Cameras go offline. Product vanishes. And your security feed. He nodded toward the interior. Has a lot of very convenient gaps. That's just bad hardware, Denton snapped. Sure, Rains said lightly. And I'm a ballerina. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, tapping the screen. A second later, he held it up so Denton could see. On the display, a grainy but clear video of the dock from above. The same scene earlier in the night, truck backing up, leather jacket shaking Denton's hand, the two hooded men unloading boxes. Denton pointing where to stack them. No janitors. No dog. No fear. Rains swiped. Another clip, a different night. Different truck. Same pattern. Denton's mouth opened and closed like a fish. That's impossible, he whispered. Those cameras were, I turned them. Offline, yeah, Rains said. The system you thought you controlled? That's building-wide. This one? He wiggled the phone. This one belonged to corporate security. New pilot program for high-value tenant locations. You must have missed that memo. Behind him, one of the uniformed officers chuckled quietly. Rains pocketed the phone. Thomas Denton, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit burglary, receiving stolen property, tampering with security systems, and whatever else the DA decides to gift wrap for you. He nodded toward Alvarez, who was standing back, dripping and pale. And we'll be looking at wage theft and labor violations too. Denton stared at Alvarez like seeing him for the first time. You're doing this? You ungrateful. I'm not doing anything, Alvarez said, voice trembling but steady. He glanced at Eric, then back at Denton. You did this. To a lot of people. Rookie growled low as if punctuating the sentence. Leather jacket shifted on the floor, water pooling under his cheek. He's the one who set up the schedules, he said suddenly, jerking his chin toward Denton. Told us when the cameras were down. Got his cut before we even left the dock. Shut up, Denton hissed. Rains's eyes sharpened. You willing to put that in a statement? Leather jacket hesitated, then nodded once. I ain't dying in prison for this clown. Good, Rains said. Because the DA loves it when criminals eat each other. He straightened, gesturing to the uniforms. All right, haul the contractors out, get them processed. Make sure our manager gets a nice, dry holding cell. I want forensics on that truck and a list of every SKU in those boxes before sunrise. As the officers moved, Denton twisted desperately toward Eric. You happy now? You think this makes you some kind of hero? You just cost me everything. My career. My condo. Eric cut him off. You did that the day you decided a man's rent and a dog's life were acceptable collateral. Denton's face twisted. You think they're keeping him? He jerked his chin at Alvarez. When corporate hears about this mess, they'll fire every hourly worker in the building. Especially the old guy with the mutt. A flicker of doubt passed through Alvarez's eyes. He clutched Rookie's collar a little tighter. Rains watched Denton being led away, then turned back to Eric and Alvarez. The sirens had calmed, replaced by the low murmur of radios and the rumble of a tow truck arriving for the box truck. You two are coming with me, Rains said. Alvarez stiffened. Are we under arrest? Rains shook his head. No. But corporate's sending a rep down. Building owner too. They want to hear exactly how their manager's been running their class of property. He gave them both a level look. You ready to tell the truth? All of it? The vases, the hours, the animal control threats. Alvarez swallowed. I don't want to lose my job. You might, Rains said plainly. Or you might get something better. That's not my lane. My lane is justice. He glanced at Rookie. And that much just became my favorite witness. Rookie wagged his tail uncertainly. Eric rested a hand on the dog's head. His knee throbbed. He was soaked, exhausted, and very aware that his leave officer was going to have formal words about tonight. But when he looked at Alvarez, at the cautious hope beginning to flicker through the old man's fear, he knew he'd make the same choice again. Yeah, Eric said. We'll tell them everything. Rains nodded toward the interior hallway. Then let's go drip on some executives. As they walked inside, Rookie padding between them, Alvarez leaned close to Eric. You think they'll listen? He whispered. People that high up? I don't know, Eric admitted. But they'll hear us. He glanced down at Rookie, who trotted forward like he owned the corridor now, tail held high. And they're definitely going to see him. Because somewhere ahead, in a conference room that smelled like money and fresh coffee, decisions were about to be made. And Eric had no idea if this story ended with a handshake. Or a pink slip. The conference room looked different in daylight. A week later, sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Ridgeway Corporate Center's 12th floor, glinting off polished chrome and glass. The city sprawled beyond, busy and bright, oblivious to the night when water and sirens had turned the loading dock into a battleground. Eric shifted in his chair at the long table, his knee brace visible now beneath regular jeans instead of coveralls. Rookie lay at his feet, chin on his paws, harness on, this time a proper one with a simple patch that read, "Service Dog in Training." Across from them sat Alvarez, hands folded tightly, wearing his best collared shirt. He'd borrowed it from a neighbor. He kept smoothing the fabric like it might offend someone important. At the head of the table, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a calm presence flipped through a folder. Beside her sat the building's actual owner, a gray-haired man with kind eyes, and Detective Rains, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere but in a corporate meeting. "All right," the woman said at last. "Let's make this simple." She closed the folder and looked directly at Alvarez. "Mr. Alvarez, on behalf of Ridgeway Properties, I want to apologize. What you endured under Mr. Denton's management is unacceptable. It violates our policies, our ethics, and frankly, basic decency." Alvarez blinked as if he wasn't sure he'd heard right. "Apologize? To me?" "Yes," she said. "To you." Rookie thumped his tail once. The owner leaned forward. "The recordings Detective Rain's team collected, plus your statements and Mr. Hart's, painted a clear picture. The forced donations of your paycheck to cover damage that wasn't your fault. The threats about your dog. The illegal hour cuts. None of that should have happened in my building." Alvarez's throat worked. "I just needed the job. I thought, maybe that's how things are now. For people like me." "It's not how they're supposed to be," the woman said. "And going forward it won't be. Not here." She slid a paper across the table toward him. Alvarez stared at it like it might bite. Rain spoke up. "It's a formal offer," he said. "Read it." Hands shaking, Alvarez lifted the paper. His lips moved silently as he read, eyes widening. Eric watched his face change, confusion to disbelief, disbelief to something more fragile. "Shift, supervisor?" Alvarez whispered. "Full benefits? A raise. And back pay for the hours Denton stole," the owner added. "Our lawyers would prefer a discreet settlement. I prefer you stay. Men who do quiet, honest work are the backbone of this place." Alvarez's eyes filled. He blinked hard, embarrassed. I never went to college. I just know how to clean." "Then you'll supervise cleaning," the woman said. "And new hires. And," she smiled faintly, "you'll help enforce the actual policies around here. Not whatever Denton made up." Rookie lifted his head, watching Alvarez like he knew this moment mattered. "There's one more thing," the owner said. "We've spoken with legal about this." He nodded toward Rookie. "Given how central this brave fellow was to exposing the crime, and given Mr. Hart's documented medical leave status, we're formally designating him as an emotional support and security adjunct for the building. If you both agree, he'll be allowed on-site as part of your combined duties." Alvarez looked stunned. "So he can stay? With me? At work?" "If that's what you want," the woman said. Alvarez turned to Eric, eyes shining. "Mijo, he gets to keep his job." Eric swallowed down the tightness in his own chest and stroked Rookie's fur. "Yeah," he said softly. "He does." Rains cleared his throat. "My captain wanted me to pass along that the DA's office loved the footage of this guy protecting his owner and blocking the knife." He nodded at Rookie. "Apparently, the video's doing the rounds at the precinct." Rookie sneezed, unimpressed. "And Denton?" Eric asked. "Arraigned," Rains said. "Bail denied. Your contractor friend is already talking. Denton's looking at real time. And thanks to your statements, wage theft and intimidation are on the list, not just the big-ticket stuff." Eric let himself exhale fully for the first time in days. Some of the pressure he carried in his shoulders eased. The woman turned to him. "As for you, Mr. Hart, we understand you withheld information about your background on your employment forms." "Yes, ma'am," Eric said. "If there are fines, I'll—" "We're not pursuing action," she interrupted. "Detective Rains made a compelling case that our HR system should have caught Metro SWAT in your work history long before a paper application did." She gave Rains a pointed look. "He also said something else." Rains looked mildly annoyed. "I said if you're smart, you'll offer him something that doesn't involve cleaning toilets." A ghost of a smile tugged at the woman's mouth. "We'd like to contract you as a security consultant during the rest of your medical leave." Review our night procedures, train staff on how to spot patterns like the ones you saw. With appropriate compensation, of course. Eric hesitated. I'm supposed to be resting. My therapist may be very interested in you doing something that helps you feel useful without kicking down doors, Rain said. Talk to her. But from where I'm standing? You turned a janitor shift into a full-scale takedown without a team or a warrant. That's not nothing. Rookie nudged his hand as if to say, take it. Eric looked at Alvarez, at the way the man held the paper like it was a lifeline. At the dog who'd gone from dumpster stray to center of the table. Okay, Eric said finally. On one condition. The woman raised an eyebrow. Which is? That whatever training we do, Eric said, includes something on dignity. On how not to treat the people who take out your trash like they're invisible. The owner nodded slowly. Done. Alvarez let out a breath that sounded like a prayer. Later, as they left the building together, Rookie trotting proudly between them with a new ID tag on his collar, the evening air felt lighter. They stopped just outside the glass doors where this had all begun. The same lobby. The same floor. But the man mopping it tomorrow would do it with a new title. I was so scared, Alvarez said quietly. Of speaking up. Of losing everything. Turns out, I lost more every time I stayed quiet. Eric leaned against the railing watching cars pass. Silence is what guys like Denton count on, he said. That nobody will believe the janitor. Or the waitress. Or the cashier. And the dog? Alvarez asked, smiling through his lingering tears. Eric looked down at Rookie, who stared back with impossibly wise eyes. The dog just believes in us, Eric said. Even when we don't. Alvarez nodded, then extended a hand. Eric shook it, firm and warm. Thank you, Mijo, Alvarez said. For seeing me. Anytime, Eric replied. This city's got enough bullies. Somebody's got to clean them up. Rookie woofed softly in agreement. As they walked toward the lot, the setting sun turned the building's glass golden. Somewhere inside, policy memos were being drafted. Somewhere downtown, Denton was sitting in a cold cell, facing the weight of the justice he'd thought would never touch him. And an old janitor headed home with a promotion letter in his pocket and a dog trotting at his side, not as contraband, but as a hero. And you, what would you do if you saw a boss humiliating someone who couldn't fight back? Look away, or step in even just a little?